Magical live streaming mojo begin. Hey, wait, it worked tonight. Hi, all. I've just been out in the neighborhood. I hope you all are safely hidden in the little spots beneath trees and under big leaves and hiding under mushrooms. I didn't see you out there, so I find that comforting. Wow, I don't know what happened last night, but here I am again. And this is the Carasoyn by George MacDonald. This thing. Yes. So to get us up to speed, those who missed out on last night and have not watched the video, our boy Colin lives with his father in a shack. Stream runs nearby. He loves the stream. He loves his father, who is a kind man. But the kid is home a lot. And he decides to reroute the stream through the cottage. When that happens, the very first night, the fairy fleet comes down the stream and into his house. He has an encounter with the queen. She's difficult, she's fickle, and he discovers that there's a small girl, a changeling, presumably, a child who's been stolen from her family and who's living with the fairies. And she wants to be free. The queen is very pleased at the new route. She thinks it's going to go well, so she offers Colin what he wants. And he says, I want the girl. And the queen says, anything but the girl. She says, look, I'll give you the girl, but you have to bring me something. I want a thing that I cannot have. I don't even know what it is. It's a drink, and it's called the Carasoyn. And I can't tell you where to find it, but if you can find it for me, I'll set the girl free. Subsequently, the fairy fleet continues out the building and plunges down a cliffside. Colin hears screams, a little short-sighted on his part to do that, and to not warn the fairies what was going on. So something terrible presumably has happened to the fairies. Anywho, Colin, however, has his mind on the Carasoyn. Chapter 3, The Old Woman and Her Hen. I guess I can stay a while. One moment. Aha. Ho-ho. What do you need, darling? Chapter 3, The Old Woman and Her Hen. In the morning, however, his courage had returned, for the word Carasoyn was always saying itself in his brain. People in fairy stories, he said, always find what they want. Why should not I find this Carasoyn? It does not seem likely, but the world doesn't go round by likely. So I will try. But how was he to begin? When Colin did not know what to do, he always did something. So as soon as his father was gone to the hill, he wandered up a stream down which the fairies had come. But I needn't go on so, he said, for if the Carasoyn grew in the fairies' country, the queen would know how to get it. All at once, he remembered how he had lost himself on the moor when he was a little boy, and had gone into a hut and found there an old woman spinning. And she had told him such stories and shown him the way home. So he thought she might be able to help him now. For he remembered that she was very old then, and must be older and still wiser now. And he resolved to go and look for the hut, and ask the old woman what he was to do. So he left the stream and climbed the hill and soon came upon a desolate moor. The sun was clouded and the wind was cold and everything looked dreary, and there was no sign of a hut anywhere. He wandered on, looking for it, and all at once found that he had forgotten the way back. At the same instant, he saw the hut right before him. And then he remembered it was when he had lost himself that he saw it the former time. "It seems the way to find some things is to lose yourself," said he to himself. He went up to the cottage, which was like a large beehive built of turf, and knocked at the door. "Come in, Colin," said a voice, and he entered, stooping low. The old woman sat by a little fire, spinning, after the old fashion, with a distaff and spindle. She stopped the moment he went in. "Come and sit down by the fire," she said, "and tell me what you want." Then Colin saw that she had no eyes. "I'm very sorry you are blind," he said. "Never you mind that, my dear. I see more than you do for all my blindness. Tell me what you want, and I shall see at least what I can do for you." "How do you know I want anything?" asked Colin. "Now, that's what I don't like," said the old woman. "Why do you waste words? Words should not be wasted any more than crumbs." I beg your pardon," returned Colin. I will tell you all about it." And so he told her the whole story. "Oh, those children, said the old woman. "They are always doing some mischief. They never know how to enjoy themselves without hurting somebody or other. I really must give that queen a bit of my mind. Well, my dear, I like you, and I will tell you what must be done. You shall carry the silly queen her bottle of Carasoyn. But she won't like it when she gets it, I can tell her. That's my business, however. First of all, Colin, you must dream 3 days without sleeping. Next, you must work 3 days without dreaming. And last, you must work and dream 3 days together." "How am I to do all that?" "I will help you all I can, but a great deal will depend on yourself. In the meantime, you must have something to eat." So saying, she rose and, going to a corner behind her bed, returned with a large golden-colored egg in her hand. This she laid on the hearth and covered over with hot ashes. She then chatted away to Colin about his father, and the sheep and the cow and the housework, and showed that she knew all about him. At length, she drew the ashes off the egg and put it on the plate. "It shines like silver now," said Colin. "That is a sign it is quite done," said she, and set it before him. Colin had never tasted anything half so nice, and he had never seen such a quantity of meat in an egg. Before he had finished it, he had made a hearty meal. But in the meantime, the old woman said, "Shall I tell you a story while you have your dinner?" "Oh, yes, please do," answered Colin. "You told me such stories before." "Jenny," said the old woman, "my wool is all done. Get me some more." And from behind the bed out came a sober-colored but large and beautifully shaped hen. She walked sedately across the floor, putting down her feet daintily like a prim matron as she was, and stopping by the door, gave a cluck, cluck. "Oh, the door is shut, is it?" said the old woman. "Let me open it," said Colin. "Do, my dear." "What are all those white things?" he asked, for the cottage stood in the middle of a great bed of grass with white tops. "Those are my sheep," said the old woman. "You will see." Into the grass Jenny walked, and stretching up her neck, gathered the white woolly stuff in her beak. When she had as much as she could hold, she came back and dropped it on the floor, then picked the seeds out and swallowed them, and went back for more. The old woman took the wool and, fastening it on her distaff, began to spin, giving the spindle a twirl, and then dropping it and drawing out the thread from the distaff. But as soon as the spindle began to twirl, it began to sparkle all the colors of the rainbow, that it was a delight to see. And the hands of the woman, instead of being old and wrinkled, were young and long-fingered and fair. And they drew out the wool, and the spindle spun and flashed, and the hen kept going out and in, bringing wool and swallowing the seeds. And the old woman kept telling Colin one story after another, till he thought he could sit there all his life and listen. Sometimes it seemed the spindle that was flashing them, sometimes the long fingers that were spinning them, and sometimes the hen that was gathering them off the roads of the long dry grass and bringing them in her beak and laying them down on the floor. All at once, the spindle grew slower and gradually ceased turning. The fingers stopped drawing out the thread, and the hen returned behind the bed, and the voice of the blind woman was silent. "I suppose it is time for me to go," said Colin. "Yes, it is," answered his hostess. "Please tell me, then, how am I to dream 3 days without sleeping?" "That's over," said the old woman. "You've just finished that part. I told you I would help you all I could." "Have I been here 3 days, then?" asked Colin in astonishment. "And nights, too. And I and Jenny and the spindle are quite tired and want to sleep. Jenny has got 3 eggs to lay besides. Make haste, my boy." "Please, then, tell me, what am I to do next?" "Jenny will put you in the way, and when you come where you are going, you will tell them that the old woman with the spindle desires them to lift Cumberbone Crag a yard higher, and to send a flue under Stone-starved Moss. Jenny, show Colin the way." Jenny came out with a surly cluck, and led him a good way across the heath by a path only a hen could have found. But she turned suddenly and walked home again. Chapter 4. The Goblin Blacksmith. Colin could just perceive something suggestive of a track, which he followed till the sun went down. Then he saw a dim light before him, keeping his eye upon which, he came at last to a smithy, where, looking in at the open door, he saw a huge, humpbacked smith, working a forehammer in each hand. He grinned out of the middle of his breast when he saw Colin and said, come in. My youngsters will be glad of you." He was an awful-looking creature, with a great hare-lip and a red ball for a nose. Whatever he did, speak or laugh or sneeze, he did not stop working one moment. As often as the sparks flew in his face, he snapped at them with his eyes, which were the color of a half-dead coal. Now with this one, now with that one, and the more sparks they got into them, the brighter his eyes grew. The moment Colin entered, he took a huge bar of iron from the furnace, and began laying on it so with his 2 forehammers that he disappeared in a cloud of sparks, and Colin had to shut his eyes and be glad to escape with a few burns on his face and hands. When he had beaten the iron till it was nearly black, the smith put it in the fire again, and called out 100 odd names. "There, Gob, Shag, Latchet, Liquor, Freestone, Grey Wacket, Mousetrap, Potato Pot, Blob, Blotch, Blunker." And even as he called, one dwarf after another, tumbling out of the chimney in the corner of which the fire was roaring. They crowded about Colin and began to make hideous faces and spit fire at him, but he kept a bold countenance. At length one pinched him, and he could not stand that, but struck him hard on the head. He thought he had knocked his own hand to pieces, it gave him such a jar, and the head rung like an iron pot. Come, young man," cried the smith. "You keep your hands off my children." Tell them to keep their hands off me, then, said Colin, and calling to mind his message, just as they began to crowd about him again with yet more spiteful looks, he added, Here, you imps! I won't stand it longer. Get to your work directly. Ha-ha! Wow! All right. Pretty sure that was the smith talking. Here, you imps! I won't stand it longer. Get to your work directly. The old woman with the spindle says you're to lift Cumberbone Crag a yard higher and to send a flue under stone-starved moss. In a moment, they had vanished in the chimney. In a moment more, the smithy rocked to its foundations, but the smith took no notice, only worked more furiously than ever. Then came a great crack and a shock that threw Colin on the floor. The smith reeled, but never lost hold of his hammers or missed a blow on the anvil. Those boys will do themselves a mischief, he said, then turning to Colin. Here, you, sir, take that hammer. This is no safe place for idle people. If you don't work, you'll be knocked to pieces in no time. The same moment there came a wind from the chimney that blew all the fire into the middle of the smithy. The smith dashed up upon the forge and rushed out of sight. Presently he returned with one of the goblins under his arm, kicking and screaming, laid his ugly head down on the anvil where he held him by the neck, and hit him a great blow with the hammer above the ear. The hammer rebounded. The goblin gave a shriek, and the smith flung him into the chimney, saying, That's the only way to serve him. You'll be more careful for one while, I guess, Slobberkin. And thereupon he took up his other hammer and began to work again, saying to Colin, Now, young man, as long as you get a blow with your hammer in for every one of mine, you'll be quite safe. But if you stop or lose the beat, I won't be answerable to the old woman with the spindle for the consequences. Colin took up the hammer and did his best, but he soon found that he had never known what it was to work. The smith worked a hammer in each hand, and it was all Colin could do to work his little hammer with both his hands. So it was a terrible exertion to put in blow for blow with the smith. Once, when he lost the time, the smith's forehammer came down on the head of his, beat it flat on the anvil, and flung the handle to the other end of the smithy, where it struck the wall like a report of a cannon. I told you, said the smith, there's another. Make haste, for the boys will be in want of you and me, too, before they get Cumberbone Crag half a foot higher. Presently, in came the biggest-headed of the family, out of the chimney.
6-foot wedges and 3-yard crowbar, he said, or Cumberbone will cumber our bones presently.
The smith rushed behind the bellows, brought out a bar of iron 3 inches thick or so, cut off 3 yards, put the end in the fire, blew with might and main, and brought it out as white as paper. He and Colin then laid upon it till the end was flattened to an edge, which the smith turned up a little. He then handed the tool to the imp. Here, Gob, he said, run with it, and the wedges will be ready by the time you come back. Then to the wedges they set, and Colin worked like 3. He never knew how he could work before, not a moment's pause, except when the smith was at the forge for another glowing mass. And yet, to Colin's amazement, the more he worked, the stronger he seemed to grow. Instead of being worn out, the moment he had got his breath, he wanted to be at it again, and he felt as if he had grown twice the size since he took hammer in hand. And the goblins kept running in and out all the time, now for one thing, now for another. Colin thought if they made use of all the tools they fetched, they must be working very hard indeed. And the convulsions felt in the smithy bore witness to their exertions somewhere in the neighborhood. And the longer they worked together, the more friendly grew the smith. At length he said, his words always adding energy to his blows, What does the old woman want to improve stone-starved moss for? I didn't know she wanted to improve it, returned Colin. Why, anybody may see that. First, she wants Cumberbone Crag a yard higher, just enough to send the northeast blast over the moss without touching it. Then she wants a hot flue passed under it, plain as a forehammer. What did you ask her to do for you? She's always doing things for people and making my bones ache. You don't seem to mind it much, though, sir, said Colin. No more do I, answered the smith with a blow that drove the anvil halfway into the earth, from which it took him some trouble to drag it out again. But I want to know what she is after now. So Colin told him all he knew about it, which was merely his own story. I see, said the smith. It's all moonshine. But we must do as she says notwithstanding, and now it is my turn to give you a lift, for you have worked well. As soon as you leave the smithy, go straight to stone-starved moss. Get on the highest part of it, make a circle 3 yards across, and dig a trench round it. I will give you a spade. At the end of the first day, you will see a vine break the earth. By the end of the second, it will be creeping all over the circle. And by the end of the third day, the grapes will be ripe. Squeeze them out by one into a bottle. I will give you a bottle. Till it is full. Cork it up tight. And by the time the queen comes for it, it will be Carasoyn. Oh, thank you, cried Colin. When am I to go? As soon as the boys have lifted Cumberbone Crag and bored the flue under the moss. It is of no use till then. Well, I'll go on with my work, said Colin, and struck away at the anvil. In a minute or two, in came the same goblin whose head his father had hammered, and said respectfully, It's all right, sir. The boys are gathering their tools and will be home to supper directly. Are you sure you've lifted the crag a yard? Said the smith. Slumkin says it's a half-inch over the yard. Grungle says it's 3/4, but that won't matter, will it? No, I dare say not. But it is much better to be accurate. Is the flue done? Yes, we managed that partly in lifting the crag. Very well. How's your head? It rings a little. Let it ring you a lesson then, Slobberkin, in future. Yes, sir. Now, master, you may go when you like, said the smith to Colin. We've nothing here you can eat, I'm sorry to say. Oh, I don't mind that. I'm not very hungry. But the old woman with the spindle said I was to work 3 days without dreaming. Well, you haven't been dreaming, have you? And the smith looked quite furious as he put the question, lifting his forearmer as if he would serve Colin like Slobberkin. No, that I haven't, answered Colin. You took good care of that, sir. The smith actually smiled. Then go along, he said. It is all right. But I've only worked 3 whole days and nights, interrupted the smith. Get along with you. The boys will bother you if you don't. Here's your spade, and here's your bottle. Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you want to hear chapters 1 and 2, they're there in a video on Facebook. You could click like on the video, that'd be nice. You can share it if you like. The second installment, which we are ending now, is chapter 3 and chapter 4. This is a novella written by George MacDonald, who was a traveling Scottish pastor, a friend of Lewis Carroll's, and the crafter of some really singular fairy tales, the like of which, the only thing I've ever seen that truly compares to it is Oscar Wilde's little dalliances with the Fae. Anywho, this was written in 1866, and I'm reading it, and with a little luck, if Facebook will allow, I'll see you again for the 3rd installment tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Please do be safe. Please do be kind to one another. And stay the heck away from each other.